Straight from the Gavel. I'm your host, Dave Barber, coming to you this day from Room 35 inside the Rhode Island State House, often referred to as the House Finance Room, where so much business is conducted throughout the year. And it gives me a great deal of pleasure to welcome a gentleman that we're delighted to have here, because he's certainly an important part of the leadership team here at the Rhode Island House of Representatives. We welcome back to Straight from the Gavel the Honorable Majority Leader Nicholas Mattiello. Leader, it's great to see you.
Dave, thank you. It's great to see you. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Well, I know you're very busy, even though the session is very young, but we thought it was particularly timely to have you here because we hope to set the stage a little bit about what you and the Speaker and other members of the House of Representatives hope to achieve this year. But let's start with the big story this week. The governor gave his State of the State address. You, of course, were in attendance. Can you give us your initial thoughts? What did you think of the presentation?
I thought the governor made a nice presentation. It was probably his best speech. I enjoyed listening to him. I was pleased with his investments and his concentration on education and infrastructure. I think he hit the right notes. I think he did a great job delivering it, and I was glad for him since it was his last speech.
Well, I know, too, a big part of any governor's State of the State address centers around the budget. It's a voluminous text. I mean, when you folks all get copies of it. But again, at first blush, what did you take away from his remarks regarding the budget, and what were some of the points that he made that you particularly liked?
Well, as I said, I liked his concentration on investments in education and infrastructure. He fully funded the education funding formula. That's another $38 million for K through 12. That really helps our education system, our students, and our municipalities. He dedicated funds for infrastructure. Rhode Island has had a bad system for funding infrastructure for many, many years, and that's probably why we don't have an infrastructure that we're pleased or as pleased with as we should be.
Right.
And he's dedicating resources to those things. So I think his viewpoint, his scope is on the future and on making investments, which is going to make the future of the state brighter. And I commend him for that. However, there's a lot of borrowing, and our Finance Committee is going to have to dissect it and really vet it very carefully.
Well, that leads me into my next question, because if there were things about it that you liked, there had to be some areas where you had concern. And again, it's very early, and as you mentioned, House Finance is going to go through all this stuff with a fine-tooth comb and hear from a lot of different interested parties as well as the community as a whole. What types of concerns do you have, again, at first blush regarding the budget?
Well, at first blush, I think there was approximately $275 million of new borrowing. That's a lot of borrowing. That's going to require the citizens of the state to pay it back over a long period of time, and we're going to commit to those obligations. I think they're worthwhile investments, and I like the areas that he's investing in. So I think that it may be worthwhile to do so, but whenever you're looking to borrow that much into your future, for your future, you have to be very careful and deliberative in the process. And our Finance Committee will do exactly that. They will vet it, they'll be very deliberative, and they'll study it, and we'll try to make the best decisions for our constituents and the future of the state of Rhode Island.
You know, Leader, and I'm sure you would agree with me here, when you talk about your concern about the borrowing, a lot of that, too, you know, there's a question of uncertainty. You know, are we through this mess with the economy yet? You know, I don't think we're completely out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. So again, I mean, a lot of these concerns might be diffused a bit if our economy can turn around, and I'm sure we're all hoping for that.
Oh, absolutely. Our economy has been slowly improving. It's not improving fast enough to satisfy anybody, and we'll continue to work on that. Last year, we've changed the governance at the EDC. We've reinstated historic tax credits. We've allowed biweekly pay. We've put money into workforce development. we've done a lot of things in the past with respect to the economy, and we're going to continue to do that. And this year, we just held a caucus, a Democratic caucus, and I would say that 90% of all of the input was dedicated to the economy and jobs. So we're going to be concentrating on that in this session.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason why we're particularly glad to have you here is that you're obviously a very influential member of the Rhode Island House, being essentially second in the leadership position behind the Speaker. And you're very close, and you pay very intimate attention to the types of legislation that will be forthcoming. What do you see as this session unfolds in 2014 as some of the big issues that you hope to be dealing with along with your colleagues in the Rhode Island House?
Well, as I've indicated, jobs in the economy. There are a lot of initiatives involving our tax structure, corporate tax, inheritance tax, sales tax. We have Chairman Jan Malik working on the Sales Tax Study Commission. They've done tremendous work. We're gonna look at all of. I particularly want to look at those three taxes and come up with a blend of tax cuts that makes us more competitive with our neighbors, Massachusetts and Connecticut. And that's where I think the emphasis is going to be. The emphasis will be on the budget. Will be on working to try to create a better business climate in Rhode Island so that we can improve our economy and our job situation.
Leader, we had sitting in that very chair a few weeks ago Representative Malik, and we talked about his Sales Tax Study Commission. And you know, if you were to ask him, he'd like to see a zero sales tax if he had the magic wand and could make that happen. What's your instincts? You've been around a long time. You understand not only the practical nature of funding the budget and operating a state the size of Rhode Island, but you understand the political ramifications as well. How do you see this sales tax matter shaken out? Well,
let me first say, Dave, that I agree with Representative Malik that I would like to see a zero sales tax, as I think every Rhode Islander would, but it's probably impractical to do so. The sales tax brings us $900 million. It's our second largest revenue source, and we have to balance our budget at the end of the year. I do believe, from my perspective, and we'll await the Commission's report, and as I said, they're doing great work. But from my perspective, I think we should be consistent with what our neighbors in Massachusetts and Connecticut are doing. I would like to see us get down to maybe 6.25%, maybe 6%, where we were historically, and I believe the intent was always to get back to that. So I think if we can get back to that point, we'd be more competitive, and it would probably be something that we could try to absorb in the budget realistically.
Yeah, and that's a good word, realistically, because if you were to put the brakes on sales tax completely, as you mentioned, $900 million?
Roughly.
Yeah, that's a pretty big pill to swallow. You know, I think maybe common sense would say if you want to indeed reduce sales tax, and a lot of you folks seem to want that, you might do it in steps or incrementally so that the shock to the revenue stream of the state is not great just like that.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that we're going to ultimately have competition from the north relative to our Twin River or our gambling revenues. So you have to be mindful that we're going to have pressures on our revenues from other areas, and therefore we have to be very careful with what we do with the sales tax. But I think we should always be competitive with our neighbors, and if you hear me talking on most issues, I think we should be competitive with our neighbors. It's unrealistic to be zero, but it is realistic to be 6.25.
Yeah, you know, that's a very good point, because who's to say in the near or mid-future we couldn't be taking some shots in revenue streams that we have currently based on the way, like gaming should shake out in some of our neighboring states. Will it cut into that, revenue stream. I mean, that's certainly a possibility, too. These are the kinds of balls that you folks have to keep in the air. I don't really envy your position because in some cases you're almost having to be a swami, like predicting what the future is going to be like, not only in our economy, but what will our neighboring states be doing, too.
Absolutely, but we don't make our decisions in a vacuum, hopefully. Most decisions we rely, and I say we, I certainly rely upon the opinions of experts. You have to rely upon economists. We have great staff. We have a great fiscal staff, and we rely on those folks to provide us the information that we need to hopefully make the best decisions we can on behalf of our constituents.
I know, too, there's been a lot of talk. There's been some suggestion that a pension settlement is near. A couple of years ago, historic pension legislation was enacted, pension reform legislation. Do you see the Assembly maybe amending any of that in 2014? Again, it's still a big issue in our state, and I'm curious as to your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are that the original pension reform bill was a very difficult bill to work through. It's a very sensitive issue, and I respect those sensibilities. You've got folks that have legitimate concerns. However, when we ultimately weighed all of the needs of the state, we passed the pension reform bill. It was a very, very difficult task to get that passed. I will tell you that myself, the Speaker, the Senate President, legislators don't know what's happening. They're secret talks, and at some point we'll be advised as to what culminates from those talks. When I learn or we learn what's ultimately negotiated, if anything is, we'll analyze it, and we'll do our best in analyzing it. But I will tell you that it's a very time-consuming process, and it's not a matter of putting a bill on the floor for an up or down vote. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. We're going to have a lot of people that want to change it with amendments. I would speculate that people within the pension system, some are going to like, some are not going to like the changes. So we'll have to see what it is, and we'll have to see what the reaction is, what the cost is to the state, what the cost is to municipalities, and weigh all of that and make the best decision we can at that time. But we will certainly be considering the best interest of the entire state and all of our municipalities when we make our decision.
Now, was the governor, in the governor's budget, did he put anything in there to deal with this issue, this pension issue, most recently this past week? No,
he did not. It is my understanding that because those pension ARC payments are planned in advance, that any changes that could potentially be made to the pension system would affect next year's budget. So I believe it would be the 16 budget, not the budget. We'll be currently working on the 15 budget.
Right.
So it would be the budget after that any potential changes would affect. So he didn't have to address it in this budget.
Well, he did put in his budget some $12+ million for the second payment to 38 studios. That's still a hot button in our state that many people are watching, and has proven to be kind of a divisive issue as well. People feeling very strongly on both sides of this particular issue. Was that the right thing to do, and is it the right thing for us moving forward?
Well, I don't know yet. And when I say I don't know from my own perspective. Generally speaking, I believe that you meet your obligations and you pay your bills. Last year, I argued to make the $2.5 million payment. That was a much smaller payment. We promised a study. We put $50,000 in this year's budget for an RFP, which we put out there, and there were no takers. So we're going to have to expand our reach with the RFP and maybe look at an educational institution to do the study, or put more money into it. I will make my final decision on whether or not that's the appropriate thing to do after I hear from some experts in an appropriate study. There is cost on both sides of it. you have to be very prudent when you dedicate $12.5 million of the taxpayers' hard-earned money. However, if we don't make the payment, there will be some negative consequences. So we're going to have to detail what the consequences are on both sides and make an informed, intelligent decision. So when I get the information, then I'll formulate my opinion on that.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out because, again, a lot of people are watching it very, very carefully, and I think it'll be interesting to see what the experts say relative to this matter. Maybe on a smaller scale, but an issue that is certainly another hot-button issue, especially if you use the Seconic Bridge, is that toll on the Seconic Bridge. You know, what's going to happen with that? Is it here to stay? Is it going to get larger? Is it going to go away? Your feelings, Leader Mattiello.
Well, my feelings are that I'm becoming very sensitive, and I've said it publicly recently. I'm becoming very sensitive to the concerns of the East Bay. They believe that the added costs will impact jobs and their local economy. And I believe in a year that where we are looking to concentrate on improving our economy and improving our job situation, that we perhaps shouldn't be assessing additional costs to an entire area of our state. Therefore, I am hoping, and if we do nothing, this April 1st, I believe, the toll goes back up to 75 cents for folks with transponders and more than that if you don't have a transponder. I think we should kick that date out a little bit. Just analyze it. We'll look at the report from the commission that's working on the issue and make an ultimate final decision. However, I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. I commend all of the representatives from the East Bay. They've been working extraordinarily hard on this issue. They've been putting a lot of time, and I don't have a conversation with any one of them where the word tolls doesn't enter into the conversation some way, somehow. Having said that, I do believe they're right. I do believe that at a time when we have to be concerned with our economy and continue to move our state forward, we don't want to put additional tax. We have to address our infrastructure needs. I think that's very important for our state and for our future, but I think the solution should be more comprehensive, and we should not necessarily put it on just one side of the state. So I think you're getting the feeling of where I am personally looking to finally go and what judgment I think I'm going to ultimately make with this, but we'll see.
Now, did I understand you correctly? Can you, as a body, move that April date? Can you extend it? I think you said April 1st, because it was my understanding that the 10-cent toll was put there kind of as a strategic or as a mechanism, because if they didn't put the toll on, that would kind of close the door to having tolls on that bridge. And this way, if it was decided that the infrastructure needed funding and money had to be raised in order to maintain bridges and the like, they had to have some sort of a toll there, so they came up with this 10-cent toll, knowing that it could change at a later date. Is this something that you'd like to have more time on before that thing kicks in on April 1?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting. We had to put a toll on before the bridge was substantially complete, or we could never toll it, so that would foreclose prematurely that option. However, if we don't make a decision or make a change by April 1st, the toll will automatically go up to 75 cents. So as a body, the General Assembly, the House and the Senate, would have to look at the issue and either make a final determination before April 1st or push the date out. And as an assembly, we certainly could do that.
Okay. Now, again, it's so good to have you here, because we're touching on a lot of issues that a lot of people are interested in and that your body could conceivably be dealing with. Last year, of course, the same-sex marriage legislation came to fruition. This year, I'm curious if you think the Assembly will address the issue of reporting those with mental health issues into the national database for gun background checks. Again, anytime you bring up guns, it's an issue that has strong opinions, both sides. Do you see the Assembly dealing with that this year?
Well, we have a commission that's studying it, and Deborah Gero, the House member who's co-chairing the committee, has been doing excellent work, phenomenal work with that committee. Everybody's working. The commission. Everybody's working very, very hard. We're looking forward to their recommendations, and it seems to me that with all of the issues involving guns, mental health is a prevalent problem, and I think that we're going to have to look at some way of reporting mental health issues into the NICS system. So I give them all credit for doing hard work, significant work with a very, very complicated issue, and I'm looking forward to their recommendations. But I would believe that we would do something with that this session.
If some of the national surveys are accurate, I haven't seen things as they pertain specifically to Rhode Island, but the overwhelming majority of American citizens I know want increased background checks, not tampering with the Second Amendment at all, but people that do have these challenges, they would like a little closer scrutiny before someone's issued a gun. And, we've had, so that there's no more carnage in our culture that has become kind of prevalent. Are you optimistic that, relative to people with mental health issues, we may have a reporting mechanism in place by the time this session is concluded?
I am optimistic, and we're going to work towards that goal. As I said, we're going to look to see what the Commission recommends. It's a very, very technically complicated issue because there are privacy issues and so forth. However, I'm looking forward to the report. I am optimistic that